Good evening. That is, if you're in a place where it's evening. My name is Daniel Rosenberg, and I am going to be hosting tonight's panel. Want to welcome you on behalf of Aish and encourage all of you to subscribe to aish.com on the YouTube channel. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump in. I'm going to bring out our panelists one by one, starting with, I guess we'll start with Ilana, who most recently was the co-EP on Mom, and she's written on amazing shows like Modern Family and King of Queens. Welcome, Ilana.
Thank you.
And then we're gonna next bring out Jeff Astroff, who is the executive producer and showrunner of an upcoming show called Shining Vale, which is a new comedy starring Courtney Cox and Greg Kinnear, which is coming out on Starz early next year. And he's currently the only showrunner in Hollywood doing Daf Yomi.
Well, we don't know. We didn't find out.
Exactly. You don't know that.
I don't know that. That's so, wow, sexist.
I'm sorry, I'm just reading what you wrote here.
Long venue.
And
I love that wall color. It's amazing.
And to round out the panel, we have, by the way, I have no intention of being able to control this panel now that Jeff's here. And the next panel is Elon Gold, who is a comedian, actor, and
now
writer.
It's time for some actual talent. And now it's time for some funny over here.
Where's the mute?
You're cutting off your own intro,
you said
but he is Elon,
okay.
at Elon Gold at Instagram.
How's my hair?
Okay.
Where is it? I don't see it.
First of all, I think it's amazing that you're sponsored by Aviator Nation. I think that's amazing. So
I wish I was. This crap's so expensive. This is my teenage daughter's. I steal her clothing. I steal the clothing of my teenage daughter. Can we just say I love both of the people on the panel and you, Daniel. And when you and Ilana and I've known Jeff, he's
you just want to be talking so that title comes up.
Jeff, let someone else
talk.
No, he never will. He never will, Ilana, and neither will I.
Oh, now Ilana gets her title.
Ilana, when I heard Daniel's, you'll get one too. When I heard,
there it is.
There he is.
Thank you.
When I heard Ilana, I thought you were saying Elon, and then you said it was on Modern Family, and I was like, "Ooh, did I just get a recurring on that I didn't even know. I thought you were breaking good news to me that I was going to be on Modern Family this season."
By the way, yes, you did.
Yeah,
you just got a 6-episode arc on Modern Family.
Thank you.
And Friends. Elon, you do have a Modern Family story about how you didn't you didn't become the star of Modern Family.
Do you already want to bring up pain for me?
What are you talking about? You right there on the top left.
But I do.
The top left.
I do.
Now I can see.
I want you to know that I actually have a list of questions, none of which I fully expect you guys to take seriously, but I'm going to try. But I like this question.
Is anyone keeping Shabbos yet based on this call?
Actually, the purpose of this call.
That's hilarious.
Guys, did we sell you? None of us were funny or interrupting before we cut Shabbos. I'm just saying that.
So here's the question.
By the way, is this another one of those panels of? Is this another panel of how to navigate Jewish life in Hollywood? Because I've never been on one of those panels. Is this one of those?
No. In fact, I thought it was one of those panels, but I was corrected that we're not to talk about what it's like to be a Jew in Hollywood. We're supposed to talk about Hollywood through the eyes of what it's like to be a Jew. So here's the first question. If you knew for sure it would be green lighted, what story would you tell? Ilana, we'll start with you.
Or green lit.
Wait, what? What's the question? Say that again.
The question is, and if you knew for sure any idea would be greenlit, what story? Do you have one that you would tell off the top of your head in your top drawer?
If I do have one, I'm not sharing it. That's yet to happen. So
that was my thought exactly.
Exactly.
Jeff Astroff is just going to steal it.
No, what would be the first act break of said story? And
no, I say that no. I'm gonna
You're gonna
pass.
pass on that.
I'm gonna pass on that.
I'll ask it a different way.
Okay.
Is there something that you once wrote that ended up in development hell that you wish saw the light of day?
No, honestly, the truth of it is I have enjoyed very much just going from staff to staff. I've been very lucky that way and have written very few pilots, and the pilots I wrote, thankfully, were never even shot. So I never had to go through that really horrific process. So yeah, I've avoided that pain thus far. I look forward to it someday. But
fantastic. And will you tell the audience what your social security number is? Now, so
nope.
Jeff,
I would sooner tell that than the idea in my drawer. But.
that's the values of
right. That's worth something. The Alana Wernick pilot is the gold. I have her social security number. It's nothing. Daniel, are you asking? Is there a Jewish story you would tell if there?
Yeah, sure. I mean. This isn't my question, so I don't know what I'm asking, but I am asking you to answer something so I look good.
Well, that's impossible. You already look great, Daniel. You're a beautiful man. I think if the question is, could you use Hollywood? Because every rabbi, not every rabbi, but a lot of rabbis, you talk about like how the Matrix was a really like a theological story about like the curtain. And the illusoriness of life, and how could you do that to talk about something like the beauty of Judaism? How could you write a show? And if you could write something like that, if I could write something like that instead of all the garbage I write that pays for this beautiful house in my Daf Yomi collection behind me, and maybe that's a shortcoming on my part. I was asked to write if I wanted to bring Shtisel to America, and I love Shtisel, and it was a very Israeli situation where everybody I met 4 different people who had the rights to it. Like, don't worry about the rights. We'll get you the rights. I was like, that's all I'm worried about. The rights are not important. It's the idea. I was like, no, the rights are the only thing that's important. So like I met so many people at Shtisel, but at the end of the day, and I totally changed the subject. It's very difficult to write about Jewish people for me because in order to be funny, I feel like, unless you do something beautiful like Shtisel, in order to be funny, which I only do comedy, you have to make the character so flawed. And I think that everybody will jump on that. And it's really hard for me to write Jews behaving badly.
I would totally agree with that. I did years and years ago, I had met with HBO about, I guess there was some woman who had a story about being a cantor's wife, and they wanted to do a show about it. And anytime I tried to tackle it, I had such anxiety because totally agree with Jeff. It can't be funny unless you show people being flawed. And I feel too guilty. That's why I much prefer.
And by the way, off of what they're both saying with stand-up, that's exactly the same way. Whereas I'm not writing characters. I'm either, talking about my experience or I'm just saying Jews in general. And I always make sure that I'm not making fun of Jews and Judaism and our rituals and culture, but I'm poking fun as an insider and a lover of Judaism, as someone that lives the most Jewish life more than the average Jew. And I'm even a better Jew than Jeff Astroff. As someone who lives a Jewish life, I am allowed, and not only allowed, but it's my job as a comedian to make fun. But I don't do it in a way that is, from a negative place of mockery. It's out of love, and it's poking fun. And the perfect example is, people don't know this, but I'll give them the credit right here live. My Christmas tree bit, which is, it went viral, and it's one of my most famous bits. And believe it or not, this guy here, this Jeff Astroff guy, is the brain behind it, who came over to me one day and just said, you should do a bit about if like Jews had Christmas trees, all the rules, and there'd be so many rules. And I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm going to do that bit. And then of course I had to write it and hone it for a year and work it out on stage. And then, but Jeff takes all the credit for it like it's his bit. But anyway, my point about bringing that bit up is perfect, because that was a perfect example of, I want to show people that I'm learned in Talmud. I love learning Torah and Talmud. I am aware of it, but I'm also, as a comedian, gonna poke fun at all the little, idiosyncrasy, not idiosyncrasy, all the little, what's the word I'm looking for, and rules and rituals and customs. Everything you have.
Right, but that bit also resonates almost exclusively with the Jewish audience. Like, the Jewish, especially if you've learned Daf Yomi or learned Gemara, like we're right now, anybody here doing Daf Yomi, it's talking about what the different rooms of the Beis Hamikdash were, and what order came first. I would be, if I was one of the rabbis in the Gemara, it would be this thin, because I'd be like, it doesn't matter, guys, you pick. But these guys argue over every little thing.
Just for everyone who's watching, do you want to explain what the Daf Yomi is for those that may not know?
The Daf Yomi is those books behind me, and actually maybe behind Alon. I don't know if those are books, but
yes.
the Gemara, the oral law of the Torah, was written down and several millennia ago by different rabbis. And it's basically every law that we live by. Like, there's no laws. Everybody thinks the Torah is the book of how we live, but the Torah in general gives the mitzvahs, but the Talmud tells us basically how to live a Jewish life. And it's every little thing. If you think, they're just doing that for no reason, that is absolutely not true. There's 72 volumes. If you do a page a day, and a page is front and back, it takes you 7.5 years to do that.
Yep.
And I'm on the current cycle of it. Oh, beautiful. Look at that.
Wow,
this
is really high tech.
That's good producing.
That is from the webpage that I sent Daniel a year and a half ago when I started, that he still has the webpage. So, it's a lot of detail, and some of it is incredible. A lot of the stories you've already heard, and some of it is just like really like, it's difficult for somebody who does, like me, who does not have that attention span to kind of parse out every little thing. But it shows you the way that our sages were thinking, and it really connects you into it's really God's will. It's why Jews are such good lawyers.
Good lawyers, exactly. And that was the point of the bit, also, to show how, wow, all these little arguments that we have are, in the Talmud, and that's what we would do if we had a Christmas tree. So to me, I was excited about the bit, and the reason it was shared is because people knew that I was doing this bit out of love. I'm just poking fun at how we have these Talmudic arguments. And most people, like a rabbi even came over to me and said, I just want you to know your Christmas tree bit inspired someone that I've been begging to come to my Talmud class every week. And he said, after hearing Elon Gold's Christmas tree bit, I want to see what this Talmud's all about. And now he's joined and he's been a regular and blah, blah, blah. But then you have the flip side of that, is I also had a rabbi come over to me and say, it's disgusting that you're making fun of the Talmud. And I'm like, wow, Rabbi, you totally missed it. Like, I'm not making fun of the Talmud. I'm poking fun of the arguments within the Talmud, and how Talmudic speak is so fascinating to me. And it has nothing to do, it's not a negative. I'm not making fun of Judaism. I've never set out to make fun of our culture.
This isn't an intervention. We don't think you did. We know.
Elon, you need an audience for it to be effective. But thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, but Alon, also as a stand-up comic, you do that, and that's your corner of the world, and that's a lot of your audience, and you do stuff obviously that's more accessible to a broader path. But you're not going to. I mean, maybe now you could sell out, but I work at Warner Brothers, and I get every project about a Jew that comes to me, and also a lot of times I'll get like, somebody has this great story, be perfect for you. What is it? It's a woman rabbi who does so and so and lives with her wife. I'm like, that's not really a perfect story for me. That's not like, and I get why you hear rabbi and you think very perfect story for me, but it's like, it's a tricky thing. And I try to just across the board. Shtisel was a different story because I really, I love the show, and I actually tried to think, how could I do that? I also thought Shtisel was such a specific show, and because where it takes place in the neighborhood of Geula, like that's what makes it amazing. So, all right, we're getting the red light here.
By the way, is anyone watching this? Do we have to be funny? Should we start being funny?
Yeah,
let's
here, and me and you.
Yeah, you don't have to be on, because it's this. This is not a professional gig. You can just be. And
when you say professional, are we not getting paid for this?
Yeah, you'll get Zelled afterwards. Don't worry.
Jeff, I'm curious. How do you pass on when you say it's not for you, the female rabbi and her wife? What do you say?
By the way, Ilana wants.
I was trying to gloss over that.
Ilana's
no,
I'm genuinely curious. I genuinely want to know, like, how do you beg off of that?
I honestly, this time I said I'm very, because the agent said we thought of you and your, because I have an article actually on Aish. I have a few articles on Aish that talk about, and they said we read your article on Aish and you'd be perfect for this. Now that is not that's a misunderstanding of my Torah beliefs. That would be perfect for it, but they on that particular article I said I'm busy. I said it's not really what I'm interested in writing right now. And thank you. I mean, that's all I say, right. Because I'm not going to engage in not going to engage in a philosophical debate, because it doesn't suit me well, and I'm just not a good spokesperson for that.
And also because network executives are shallow, awful people who can't have philosophical debates.
Actually, let's bring on the network executive who's in the other room. No, but they don't care about that. They don't care about. I tried bringing out a Jewish story this past year, and it didn't go. And I brought it, and it was a real story, and it was wonderful story, and it didn't go anywhere. So it's tough. It's tough to do those stories.
Do you guys think Hollywood is anti-religious?
I mean, in a word, yes. In two words, yes. I think it's secular. It's like I've been told that too. I wrote a character,
But hold on, there's a difference between being secular and being anti-religious.
Okay, so they and I'll let someone else speak. I'm sorry, but just because I've dealt with this, where I made a character, talked about him going to summer camp, Jewish summer camp, and I got a note. We like our characters to be secular, and apparently Jewish summer camp. That secular is a code name for not religious. So I think it's very, very difficult. And it also could be difficult just because, I don't know, it's a different moment now. It's a really different world now. I don't know, Ilana, do you deal with anything like that?
Well, I was going to ask specifically what the question is. Is it that Hollywood in content is anti-religious, or Hollywood to work in Hollywood as a religious person?
No. Well, I think they kind of go hand in hand, but the question is, do you think that the development process doesn't allow the type of programming that might be considered religious centered to get through? Will they not even buy to begin with?
I mean, I can't speak to the development part of it so much, again, because of the pilots I've written, it's been nothing to do with religion. But of the shows I've written on, I wrote on The Middle, that was a very wholesome show that dealt with religion sometimes. Anytime there was a church episode, I wrote it. Huh. And on King of Queens, I wrote a ton of episodes that had to do with religion. Again, Kevin James is a religious Catholic, and he liked his character every once in a while going to church. So we did shows on tzedakah. We didn't call it that. We did a show on Taras Mishpacha, separating when a woman is in nida. So I didn't call it that. But my personal experience has been, everyone has been incredibly, in terms of, that's nice. In terms of,
you see them separated. That was the Taras Mishpacha episode, because they're separated.
Exactly. In terms of just how I'm treated as a religious person, by and large, I've been treated so kindly and so well. And I always tell people, I think the important thing is that when you start the job, you're very clear about what you can't do. But you say it in a way that's not entitled, but also not too apologetic. It has to be very down the middle, respectful, but matter of fact. And when you stick to those rules, I find that people really respect that. It's the one thing that I do find is every once in a while you'll get a snide comment, not necessarily about being Jewish, but just religion in general, that you have to be very respectful of people, for everything, anything that they might believe in. But religion, oh, they're just crazy. That comes up every once in a while. That's the one thing that you can still make fun of about people, say they're nuts, but you can't say that about anything else. So I find that interesting.
It's probably not unique to Hollywood either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So Elon, tell us, do you want to weigh in on this question?
Not really, because for me, the experience, like in front of the camera as an actor, it varies to where my religion affects my ability to work. Like most sitcoms film on Friday night. And I was, I've told this story before, but I was on a show called Bones. I was doing a recurring role. That's a drama, whatever. That's not a sitcom. And they had to.
Didn't start that way before they cast you. Go on.
It was my 4th episode with them, and it was going to be filmed on Friday night into like a first Seder. And I said to them, oh my God, can you have me wrapped by like 5 o'clock on Friday? And they were like, no, it's going to be late into Friday night, probably past midnight. And we may even have to shoot whatever, Monday night also. And that was first Seder night. And I just went, I can't do it. I got to be wrapped. And they just wrote me out. Like I was a recurring role. I was dating one of the leads of the show. And I was going to deliver Bones's baby in the season finale. Because of course I was playing a gynecologist. There it is. Wow, you guys are good with this. Why aren't I on the poster? I was in 3 episodes. But anyway, that was an experience where, it was negative in the sense that I was trying to stay true to my faith and my Judaism. And, instead of being rewarded, it was sort of a punishment. But I know that, God has a better plan, and I don't question, but I know that was meant to be for me, and that wasn't my path. But then there are things like I was saying with sitcoms shoot on Friday night. I had done so many sitcoms where first, if you're just guest starring on it, you can't say to them, can we move the schedule to tape on Thursday? But when you're the star of it, and Jeff and I worked on In-Laws together, Whoa. And I asked the showrunner, I can't film on Friday night, and they respected it because I was, one of the stars of it. We filmed on Tuesday night. When I did Stacked with Pam Anderson, they said that also was filming on Friday night. And I said to Steve Levitan, is there any way we could film this on any other night? And he goes, yeah, I don't care. You have to ask Pam. She's the star of the show. And I went over to Pam Anderson and said, can we film this not on Friday night because of Shabbat? And she goes, I love Shabbat. Oh my God, I always go to Shabbat dinners. I love Shabbat. You would never think the woman that's regarded as the ultimate shiksa would be so into Shabbos. She was like, can I come to a Shabbat? And then I had to, and then by the way, she said, but wait, wouldn't that cut into my weekend? And I went, no, Pam. And by the way, she's bright. I know I'm painting her out to have a blonde moment, as they say. She's very bright. But I had to explain to her that it's the opposite. If we don't tape on Friday night, tapings could go to midnight, and we tape Thursday night. Friday morning, you just come in at noon for a 1-hour table read. Then the writers do all the work, and we get to go home. You start your weekend at 1. She goes, let's tape Thursday night. So it was like, again, you always have to navigate it. Look, I'm an observant.
I didn't understand any of that. I didn't understand that at all. I'm kidding.
As an observant Jew, and I don't call myself religious, as I say in my
no one does.
Act, I'm not religious. My rabbi's religious. My grandfather very religious. My Zaidi was so religious he had 2 toilets, one for meat, one for dairy. But I'm not. I don't like to call myself religious because that's too much pressure. But I am observant, and I am Sabbath observant, and I love it. And I don't want to. I don't want to go against. This is the life that I've. Oh my God! Who did that?
All right, the producing is getting too good now. Next thing you know,
hilarious.
Let's get the picture from the wedding night.
You want to hear a great story that will inspire some Aish folks?
Yeah.
Afterwards.
What?
After we're done.
Do you know that because I don't consider Bones as a firing. I was just written out because I sort of said I can't show up to set, and then they had to replace me. But the only show I was ever fired from, ever, was a show. The very first show that I got was taping on Friday night, like they all do. And I was new to everything. I'm 23 years old. And I said, I can't even tell them I'm observant or they'll just get rid of me. So what I did was I got an apartment next door to the studio, and I would literally just walk home Friday night when the taping ended, let's say 10, 11 o'clock. And that's when I would do Kiddush and start Shabbos. And I would justify it in my head and say, well, sometimes you have to make sacrifices in order to get to a level where I could say, no, now I'm the star. We're not doing it Friday night. And also, okay, I'm not driving. I'm just like starting Shabbos a little bit later than I should. And you justify it, and that's wrong. I'm not saying that's right. But at least I'm not driving. I'm not this, I'm not that.
Also,
So
the malacha of making people laugh you didn't do, which is good.
Explain what malacha means.
Malacha.
But what happened was then
Go on.
a few years later, I did this pilot, and there was no way to walk. It's like in the middle of Burbank, and it was just, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to drive home, and the pilot shoots on Friday night, and I'm not the star of it, and I can't change the schedule. I tried, they wouldn't. I'm gonna have to just, this one time, and I'm still very young, and I wasn't even as strong in my connection and my amuna as I am now. So I just went, all right, God will forgive me if I just one time drive home on Friday night from the pilot. And I did that, and it was the only pilot I was ever fired from. And I was fired. It was me, Eugene Levy. He was also fired. I don't know what he did so bad, but he was fired because
Also work on a Friday night.
Kira Sedgwick came in and she looked at the pilot and said, I just want a whole new cast. And the funny story about that is she then had a meeting later on with the ABC executives and said, this is a show about a New York radio station. We should have some Jewish people. And they were like, Kira, you fired all the Jews. Eugene Levy, Longo, now you're saying you want the Jews back? But anyway, that was the only show I was ever fired from. And it was such a lesson. And it was the last time I ever drove on Shabbat. And this is like over 20 years ago. It was such a lesson in like crime and punishment. And you could always tell yourself things like, well, I'll just, cheat on my wife this one time and, God will forgive me or she'll forgive me. But once you do this thing, it's like it leads to more sins. And then it was this punishment of being fired that was such a wake up call of like, okay, that's God revealing himself to me and saying, no, you can't. If you're committing to being Sabbath observant, you're going to keep Shabbos, keep it and don't make exceptions and don't do any of that because that's not how it works in marriage, in Judaism, in life. You can't just I'll just murder this one person because I hate them. I have to kill this person. It's like, no, you're going to jail. You murdered a person.
I don't know.
Somewhat concerned. It's a little concerning, Alon, that your gateway sins are adultery and murder, but okay.
The little ones.
And then that leads to worse stuff. I mean, who knows what you'll do?
Next thing you know, you're a serial killer and a rapist.
All right. Wow. Well,
All right,
thank you. Do we have any?
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
The editor's going to be very busy on this one. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask Ilana, if you didn't end up being a TV writer or could choose another career, any thoughts on what that would have been?
Well, I did choose another career. I was going to be a journalist. I went to journalism school. I always loved writing, and I thought, I did not grow up in LA. I grew up in New York on Long Island, and I being a sitcom writer, and I grew up Orthodox. So that was not something that would have ever occurred to me. It was not something that anyone I knew did. So when I wanted to be a writer, I thought, well, if you want to be a writer, you have to be a journalist. What else are you going to be? I'm not going to write the great American novel, let's whatever. So, but I hated it. I just absolutely hated it. I loved writing, but I hated the reporting. I would keep forgetting to ask a question, and then I'd have to call back, and how do you spell your name right? And it's so nothing. I liked nothing about it. And then I was living in New York, and there were these classes being given for sitcom writing and other stuff like that. And I thought, well, I've been watching television my entire life, and I hate my job, so let's try this. And that's kind of what happened. But that was the road not taken.
Yeah. That's interesting. And what about you, Jeff? Any thoughts? You were a stockbroker.
I was not in the stock market. I was an investment banker years and years and years ago, and I did stand up comedy at night. And I actually I used to do this joke. I won Funniest Man on Wall Street, which was like Jewish high jumper. It was like not a very big pool. But I tell people who want to be writers, and I get a lot of that. I get a lot of people who say they want to be writers, and I say, and I truly believe, if you don't be a writer because you want to be a writer because you have to be a writer, because it is very, very, it is gut wrenching, and it's a constant case of careful what you wish for, because at every step of it, it is just. By the way, see this beard? I'm 26 years old. That was the funniest joke I've ever said. It is a grueling job where you're faced with constant rejection. Where Andre Agassi has a book called Open, where he says winning does not feel as good as losing feels bad, and it's and Ilana was right. Ilana said, "Thank God I never got a pilot mate," because the pressure and the crushing blow of when it doesn't get picked up is almost as bad as when it does get picked up. And it's just like, it's very, very hard. And again, I thank God that I have the skills that I do. It's a very rarefied skill set. Like I say, I'm like good at 5 things, and 4 of them happen to be in terms of writing and running a show.
What's the 5th?
I was wondering the same thing.
I'm a really good at texting.
Good at texting?
Funny texter.
Oh, funny texting.
Yeah,
text me. Counts as the same sort of.
That's kind of the same thing.
It's non-pro.
Texting is writing.
Texting is writing.
I'm
what else are you good at?
Maybe growing a beard, growing an old man's beard.
That's very good, but that came with age, though. I wasn't always good at that. I would say though that and when people say I want to do this, I either want to be a writer and I said whatever comes after the or, do that, because it is like it's something that you have to be driven for. It really is. And again, I'm so blessed with the level I've gotten to, and I know it's a very rarefied job, and the people on this panel know that doing what you do and getting someone to pay for it is great, and you have to take a step back and realize that it is a lot of people's fantasy job, so to speak, and it winds up just being a job. And for us, it's passion and it's heartache, and for everybody else, it's just a job. And when you say, Daniel, I think that unfortunately, going back to your religious question, I think that the show Unorthodox probably has more viewers than the show Orthodox, because it's because there is no such show, but also because it's just like people like people who break the rules. Somebody keeping the rules is not as interesting, and somebody breaking the rules, it gives people forgiveness, and especially now, Alana said there's so many things there's so many boundaries. But if I could do anything else, if I was great at something else that was easier, I would do that, but I'm not. And also I love what I do, and I love making jokes and telling stories, but it comes at a digestive price.
You know what else you're good at, Jeff? Picking hat slogans.
I am very good at that. Yes.
You're so good at that.
My former one, earlier in my career, life is okay, never went anywhere. Life is just fine.
Powered by mediocrity.
Yes.
So why don't you come up with some questions, guys? Why am I doing all the work? Oh, because they made me the host last minute. So here I go. So Elon, do you find that going mainstream with your comedy? I mean, you have a Netflix special. I think now it's Prime Video. Do you find that it's easy to cross over do you consider yourself a Jewish comedian, or do you consider yourself, I mean, you obviously travel in the echelons of the world. Like, how do you define yourself, or have others defined you for you?
And define echelons, please.
Wait, I'm Googling echelons. I don't identify as a Jewish comedian, although I love being a Jewish comedian. I identify as a Jew. I identify as a comedian. as a dad, as a husband. I am many things, but I don't like Jewish comedian, just like you wouldn't say, oh, Chris Rock is a black comedian. No, Chris Rock is just an amazing comedian and like my favorite. But he probably loves the fact that he's a black comedian. And I love that I am a Jewish comedian. And if you watch my special, I talk proudly about being Jewish. And, you know, on James Corden, I you know, one of my favorite things about that set is that I got to not only identify as Jewish proudly, but dispel the money stereotype when I do my, you know, you could Google it, Elon Gold on James Corden. I love dispelling negative stereotypes but Jewish comedian is, it's the coolest club to be in, because, you know, you're in a club with like everyone from the old timers, like, you know, Sid Caesar and Jack Benny and George Burns and then Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, and then to today, the Seinfeld and Larry and all that. So to be a Jewish comedian, to be in that club, I got my biggest compliment last night at dinner. I was at dinner and it was it was my first compliment. It was my first compliment. What'd you say, Jeff?
I said, that wasn't bad. That was your biggest compliment.
No, it was my first compliment of my life. And we were talking about how I'm doing a recurring role on this season's Curb Your Enthusiasm. Not important. But he said to me, he goes, you know, I've been a fan of yours. And when I watch you, I actually think like this guy belongs in Curb. Like he belongs, that should be his chevra. That should be his group. You know, Richard Lewis and Jeff Garland, who is a friend, and Larry. And I feel like I do belong there and I do fit in there. And to be, it's like, it's cool enough to be a member of the tribe. You know, just to be a Jew is so special. And it's so great to be, yeah, I'm an MOT. But to be one layer above that, I'm a Jewish
old Jew.
A what?
An old Jew.
To be an old Jew, no, and to be a Jewish comedian is amazing. So while I don't, it's so funny because it's like the dichotomy of I love being a Jewish comedian, but I don't love having that label of, you know, oh, he's a Jewish comedian. No, I'm a comedian. I happen to talk about, you know, being Jewish a lot, but it's not exactly what I am, but I'll take it.
And Jeff, the same question for you. I mean, do you consider yourself a Jewish writer? No. So, yes, but you want to say something?
No, I want to let that sit. I want to let that silence, that pain.
Yeah.
People know, you know, one of the great things, and I've actually used Ilana, you know, as for strength, you know, early on, because I did not grow up observant. And so, you know, Alana always really, she said, you know, just, it is what it is. Like, it was never a question for her. And for me, as I was growing and learning and taking time off, and I have a million stories like that. You know, now everybody who works with me looks forward to Shabbat because they know that they're off for 25 hours. It's amazing. People say Shabbat Shalom to me. I'm like, it's Tuesday. It's like, I know, but they're like, they're like,
Shabbos somewhere.
By the way, everybody's counting the Omer who works at Warner Brothers right now. They know exactly how many days they're, you know, they love it.
But I hope when they ask, you tell them what it was yesterday.
Yes, I did.
Of course. This is not his first rodeo.
It's yes.
Ilana, were you?
And it's been 36 days since I took my last vacation day.
Ilana, were you observant growing up?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It did make, well, like Jeff was saying, it did make it very easy for me. There was never any chance of me working on Shabbos. So the only stress I ever feel is when you start a new job and it's the whole thing of like, okay, here's the 7 days in September that I can't work. And, you know, and it was especially hard as a new writer because what do they need me for? And definitely easier when you're working 20 plus years and people, you know you by reputation, hopefully good reputation, and also just know that you're observant because it's not that big a community. I mean, being in the sitcom world is very much like being in the Orthodox world. Everybody, you may not know everybody, but you know someone who knows them. So, yeah, it it was never a hard thing for me. It was stressful because of knowing I had to have that conversation, but it was always like, well, if I have to work on Friday night, then I'm not here. So.
And what was was Mom, because Mom is a Chuck Lorre show, and
yeah,
was that difficult because
that was really not difficult at all. I was coming to work for the people running the show. One of the showrunners was Nick Bakay, who's an amazing guy and hilariously funny, and I worked with on King of Queens, so he knew the deal when he hired me. So it did make it a lot easier. But I did have a situation on one show where I had to be there for filming, and it was a single camera, and you're supposed to be there your week when it's your episode. And I reminded the showrunner that I couldn't be there Friday night. And the showrunner said, but you said you would work on Fridays of your week. And I meant Friday during the day because I was only working 4 days. It never occurred to me that someone would think, oh, she can't work Friday night unless it's her episode. And then it's like, it's okay.
That's what the Gemara's for.
Right. So that was very awkward. But it did work out because, as Jeff knows, you can't ask a Jewish person to take your place in a job on a Friday night or Shabbos.
But you can hint it. You can hint it.
Well, here's the thing. Everyone I worked with was not Jewish, which was also shocking. It was like the first time in the history of the world that it was a writing staff where I was the only Jewish person. So I was able to have someone, every time it was my episode, I had someone fill in for me, and I just gave them a nice, Amazon gift card. So everybody won.
Jeff, what is the equivalent?
$18. Hi.
Jeff, what is the equivalent of like hinting, like, gee, it's really dark in here, right? To get the Shabbos going to turn the lights on.
If it would benefit you to see this show being filmed and a blow to this scene.
Right. What is the blow to this scene? It's not. I'm not sure.
Yes, it would be if you use your elbow to come up with a blow to this. By the way, we've just lost everybody. We've lost the people who don't know what a blow is, and we lost the people who don't.
Yeah, exactly.
The last joke in the scene.
Keep it English.
I have to picture the shinui.
Here's I'm going to try to underail this. This is a question that I thought, let's see what you guys think about this question. Is just entertaining people good? Why do you think there's no word for entertainment in the Bible? Sort of like there's no word for history in the Bible.
Isn't there a thing in the Gemara? Somebody says a comedian goes straight to heaven or something.
That's a big thing in the Talmud where they're pointing to those two guys. You see those two guys? They're going straight to heaven, and they ask why those two guys? Because they spend their lives making people laugh, which is why Jeff's going straight to Gehenna.
Ouch.
And look, I see how Alon really, really avoided making people laugh on that. He is a Torah Jew. Yes. There's no word for entertainment. I don't know. My Hebrew's not good enough. I think that making people laugh, that story is when you make people laugh and that brings them close together. That's what I think every comic says, oh, I can tell dirty jokes because that's the Gemara. But it really is, if you make people laugh to bring them together. Being mean, spirited, and laughing at the expense of people is your
whole life story.
I just read this great. I read this great article just today from the Jewish Journal, and I know that normally you don't hear that sentence. No, I'm kidding. I love the Jewish Journal.
And we just lost the Jewish Journal as a sponsor.
Really?
I love it. I read this article in the Jewish Journal, which is it's about how vaccinations are so important. It's such a Torah concept to heal yourself, and that science and medicine is finally caught up with this horrible pandemic, and now we have a chance to heal ourselves. And the Torah is all for healing, and it's all these great sources of Maimonides and this that tells you don't just rely on God, because God, although He wants you to rely on Him, He also wants you to make the right choices and take care of yourself. You can't look at the Empire State Building, look down and go, I'm going to jump and God's going to catch me. No, God still wants you to have some seichel. But the interesting thing in that article that made me think, one of the pieces is, look at how healing is so important in Judaism, and how many Jewish doctors are there, per capita of people? There it is. And it was so interesting that the observation that I had was, wow, that's true. We've all known that there's so many Jewish doctors, but why? And I finally connected that Tikkun Olam, I mean, that's the big message of Judaism, which is heal the world. And it's interesting that so many Jews became doctors because they want to heal the world. And how it comes back to answering your question about entertainment, Jamie Masada, the owner of the Laugh Factory, calls comedians doctors of the soul, because doctors heal the body, but comedians heal your soul. Like, by making you happy and making you laugh, we're sort of healing your soul the way doctors heal your body. So I think whether or not the word entertainment is in the Torah, the message of the Torah, which is Tikkun Olam, is so much of what, not that we're actively trying to heal the world when we write our stupid jokes or tell our dumb jokes, but it is healing. You can't deny it. And my point is, subscribe to the Jewish Journal, everybody.
Yeah, for those of you who are playing at home on your bingo cards and had Pamela Anderson, Vaccine, Jewish Journal, and Aviator Nation,
you are doing great.
By the way, this is what she wrote. Speaking of that, this is that famous story that I just told. Happy Shabbat, Elon.
That's really good. This is
that is so sweet.
We just lost the last rabbi from the chat. Thank you.
What are you talking? It's
very tznius.
It is
very modest.
Very modest.
Very modest.
So healing the world.
Yeah. By the way, Tikkun Olam, healing the world, repairing the world.
And also, that is me and Steven Spielberg. It's not important.
No, it's really not.
No, I have Photoshop too, Elon. It's a big deal.
It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah,
you have Photoshop too.
Photoshop. It's free now. Okay, what's next up, Daniel?
Yeah, next up,
is anybody left?
Yeah, I'm actually scared to ask how many people are not watching this. So
put it this way: if my parents didn't know about this, the marketing team should be fired. My parents always go, "Oh, I hear you're doing a Zoom at 3 p.m. on Thursday." I'm like, yeah, do you have to watch that too? They didn't call me. They don't know that this is happening. So we got to do better at advertising this situation.
So why does everyone want to watch ultra-Orthodox people? Why isn't there a show, which I don't know if this is true, but I'll ask it anyway. Why isn't there a show about very religious Christians?
So I think saying everybody wants to write about ultra-Orthodox people is it's a very splintered audience. If you're talking about Shtisel, I don't know how many people watch Shtisel. I'm guessing 500,000 people. But that's like 500,000 people. So it's not, it's not everybody. I think people are interested. I think what Shtisel did, if you're talking about that, is Shtisel, after I saw Shtisel, I emailed one of the guys who created Ori Alone, and I said, because in Israel, there is a huge problem between the or not a huge problem, but there's disagreements between the ultra-Orthodox and secular and modern Orthodox. There's a lot of divisions, Jews. And I asked him, how do you pitch a show like that? And he said, basically his pitch was, because they didn't want to do it in Israel, he said his pitch was that it's just like The Sopranos without sex, drugs, murder, and cursing. And they said, well, what's left? And he said, family.
Wow.
And right, is that a great pitch? And so at the end of the day, I think why people want to see people, it's a curiosity. I think you get people on a curiosity. It is like, it's a world that people kind of have a vague idea, and it's just a curiosity. There was a show about Mormon people and I guess there's a show about Amish people. And I think it's just out of curiosity. Look, I think for Jewish people, I think, we all have a Jewish soul. And I think that there's a part of that resonates. And I have to tell you that I remember sitting in a room full of Jewish people on a Friday afternoon. Everybody knows I have to leave it, in the summer at 4:00. And we were talking about cell phone addiction. And this room full of Jewish people said, I wish there was just one day where I could shut off my cell phone. It's too bad there's not. And I was like, there is. But so I think
they're all jealous of that. They're all jealous of Shabbos. They're so they love the idea of it, but it makes no sense for them because there's no like law or rule. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, Jeff, but it's true. They all are so envious of that.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, it's such a gift. It is such a gift. And instead of looking at like the things you can't do, it's, for me, I do not know what I would do without it, because it's like literally this week, it was like, I was Monday. I was like, tomorrow's Shabbos. It's like, no, it's Monday, and it's just like, cause you have you have the stress of the week, and I have a really good, I have a good story. I don't know if it is about how, I think I told you, Daniel, about how Shabbos saved my show from COVID. And there's like just a million little like miracle stories surrounding Shabbos. And I really do believe, and Ilan told the downside of that, what happens if the connection when you don't observe Shabbos. But I have so many stories about how, observing Shabbos really, really, really saved me, and in a very, very physical way too. I mean,
do you think if you weren't observant, you became observant later in your career, do you think it's hard? I mean, Ilana, you kind of did something I don't hear a lot of people being able to do in our business, which is remain true to your observancy the whole way through. A lot of people I know that became observant in Hollywood did it later in life because they weren't, paying their dues, and they had the ability to call the shots, choose the schedule. Do you think that that's preventing observant Jews from being in Hollywood, or do you think that it seems like the world is accepting of everything except observancy these days? So how do you reconcile that?
I always feel like, getting back a little bit to what Jeff was saying before, that, if you think there's something else you can do, unless you have to do this, don't do that. Unless you're really great at doing this. And I know that automatically saying like, we're great at doing this, guys. If you're really good at something, there's not that many people, honestly. I know we always talk about there's 1,000 people lined up to get our jobs, but they're not necessarily 1,000 qualified people. So if you're really good at something, people are willing to, they're willing to make concessions. But if you're not any better than the next guy, there's no reason why they shouldn't have someone who can be there on a Friday night. So it's true. Yeah.
And for me as a comedian, I that works nightly, Friday night's a big night in comedy, and to take off every single Friday night and to be with, my wife, 4 kids, and I have like 4 pretty much all teenagers who spend their lives just like this, just like, it's so sad. And then Friday night, I call it connecting by disconnecting, is the only night of the week where even at the dinner table, they'll still be searching and we'll say, put your phones down, let's have dinner. But there is no put your phones down. Their phones are away from the second Shabbos starts until the second it ends. And we actually have the most fun on those nights. We have the best conversations. We, play games, card games, whatever. We have great conversations. We just have, so much more fun because the phones have to be off. So for me, like Jeff was saying, it is a gift. I'll never forget when someone said to me, feeling bad for me, like, oh, you keep this Sabbath thing, so wow, you don't get to do this, you can't go to the movies, you can't. And I'm like, it's so sad that you see it as what I can't do, because I see it as what I can do. I can take a nap in the middle of the day, which when do you get to do that? I can day drink. You have to have Kiddush at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
You can't even have lunch before you day drink. There's so many great things. No, you can be with your family. You can turn your phone off, and it's all the things that you can do. That is, it's Shabbos is the greatest gift we have.
Someone said to me, when you learn how to swim, are you upset that you can't use your phone in the pool? No, because you're not focusing on that.
That's the best metaphor I've ever heard for Shabbos.
When
you learn how to swim, are you afraid you can't use the phone?
Thank you, and I appreciate you not saying that sarcastically. So, guys, I think
I know we couldn't tell for a second.
But guys, I've had back to back today. And,
we know.
Yeah.
We know.
Oh, we've heard. We're on the email chain, Jeff.
That's my fourth thing I do. I email my schedule. I'm amazing at it.
By the way, did I mention that just before this, I was on a podcast? I don't want to brag, but I know a lot of people.
By the way, thank you for being on my son's podcast.
I got a podcast. What's that, Jeff?
I should have said that in the beginning. Thank you for being on my son's podcast.
Well,
anyway, Daniel.
I think it's time. I think we should thank our audience member for sticking with us.
Thank you, Daniel.
And that was the best joke of the night.
Here. It's just me, you, and we do.
Non-pro.
Yeah. By the way, it's the first time we're more numerous up here. So look, I want to thank you.
By the way, don't forget to shut the internet off when you leave.
Will this at least live somewhere where it wasn't just a live broadcast, but people can watch it in the future?
It wasn't live. It's just
we'll do the after show, guys. I'll send a link.
Why didn't we just do this on FaceTime?
That's good stuff. All right, so we'll continue it. We'll continue it there. Alana Wernick, Elon Gold, Jeff Astroff. Thank all three of you guys for being here.
You, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've convinced a lot of people to become Jewish tonight.
Oh, definitely.
And and Aish, thank you guys as well for letting us ruin your reputation. Please subscribe to Aish on YouTube and give generously because it doesn't hurt to say that. Good night.
We love Aish.
Thank you.